Have you ever felt like you don't really matter? Not in some dramatic way, not because someone told you that you were worthless, but in those quiet moments when the world seemed too big, too loud, too busy, and you felt impossibly small inside it. Maybe it happened while you were scrolling through social media late at night. Thousands of faces, thousands of voices, people celebrating achievements, sharing vacations, building businesses, falling in love, changing the world. And there you were, sitting in silence, wondering if anyone would notice if you simply disappeared from the screen. Maybe you've walked through a crowded city and felt it. The streets overflowing with people, cars rushing past, conversations happening all around you, everyone moving toward somewhere, everyone carrying their own stories. And for a brief moment, you realize something unsettling. The world would keep moving, whether you were there or not. Tomorrow, the sun would still rise. The traffic would still flow. The stores would still open. The news would still be broadcast. Life would continue. And that realization can feel heavier than most people admit, because deep down, every human being wants to matter. Every human heart wants to know that its existence means something. We rarely talk about it, but it's there, hidden beneath our ambitions, hidden beneath our goals, hidden beneath our need for approval. Beneath everything else, there is a simple desire to know that our lives make a difference, to know that we are not just passing through this world unnoticed, to know that our presence leaves something behind. Yet modern life has a strange way of convincing us otherwise. It teaches us to measure our value through numbers. How many followers, how many likes, how many views, how many people know our name, how many accomplishments we can place on a resume, how much money sits in a bank account, how much attention we can attract. And without realizing it, we begin to believe a dangerous lie. A lie so common that most people never question it. The lie that significance must be large to be real. The lie that if millions don't know who you are, then somehow your life matters less. The lie that importance can only be measured by visibility. So we spend years chasing recognition, years trying to become someone, years trying to prove that we deserve to be seen. Some people work themselves to exhaustion. Some people constantly seek validation. Some people become addicted to achievement. And some quietly suffer because no matter how much they accomplish, it never feels like enough, because the finish line keeps moving. The approval never lasts. The applause eventually fades. And after every victory comes the same haunting question: is this all there is? Will I finally matter now? The truth is, many people spend their entire lives trying to become important to everyone. And in doing so, they miss something extraordinary, something that was standing right in front of them all along. But before we get there, let's stay with this feeling for a moment. Because if you've ever felt invisible, you're not alone. Maybe you were the child who always tried to make everyone proud, the one who worked hard, behaved well, did everything right, yet somehow still felt overlooked. Maybe you were the friend who always listened to everyone else's problems, the one people called when they were hurting, the one who stayed up late comforting others, yet when your own heart was breaking, nobody seemed to notice. Maybe you were the partner who gave everything, your time, your energy, your love, only to wonder whether it was ever truly appreciated. Or maybe you're simply someone trying your best every day, paying bills, going to work, taking care of responsibilities, getting through life one day at a time. And because your life doesn't look extraordinary from the outside, you've started believing it isn't important. But here's something worth thinking about. The stars that shine brightest in the sky are not always the ones closest to us. And The things that shape our lives most deeply are often the things we barely notice while they're happening. Think about it. A single conversation can change someone's future. A few encouraging words can alter the course of a life. A moment of kindness can become a memory someone carries for decades. Yet the person offering that kindness often has no idea what they have done. Most of the impact we have on other people happens invisibly, like roots growing beneath the ground, hidden, silent, unseen. And because we cannot immediately see the results, we assume they aren't there. We assume we haven't mattered. We assume we haven't made a difference. We assume our lives are smaller than they truly are. But what if that's not true? What if the reason you feel insignificant has nothing to do with your actual value? What if you've been measuring your worth with the wrong ruler all along? Imagine standing in the middle of a vast ocean. You throw a small stone into the water. At first, it seems insignificant, tiny, meaningless, but then the ripples begin. One circle becomes another, then another, expanding far beyond the place where the stone first entered the water. Human lives work much the same way. Every word, every act of compassion, every moment of patience, every expression of love creates ripples. The problem is that we rarely get to witness where those ripples end. We don't see the stranger who found hope because of something we said. We don't see the friend who gained strength because we believed in them. We don't see the family member who felt less alone because we were there. So we tell ourselves a false story, a story that says, if I can't see my impact, then I must not have any. But impact doesn't disappear simply because it's invisible, and meaning doesn't become less real simply because it cannot be measured. Some of the most important things in life have always been invisible. Love is invisible. Trust is invisible. Hope is invisible. Yet few things are more powerful. Maybe the same is true about the value of a human life. Maybe the most meaningful parts of who you are cannot be counted, cannot be ranked, cannot be displayed on a screen. Maybe your worth was never meant to be measured by how many people know your name. Maybe your worth exists in places statistics can never reach, in hearts, in memories, in moments, in lives quietly touched by your existence. And if that's true, then perhaps the question isn't whether you matter to the world. Perhaps the question is much more personal than that, much more intimate, much more beautiful. Because what if the greatest mistake we make is believing we need the whole world to notice us? What if somewhere right now there is someone whose life is brighter simply because you exist? Someone who sees you very differently than you see yourself. Someone who carries a memory of you that you have completely forgotten. Someone whose story was changed by your presence in ways you'll probably never know. And what if that changes everything? Because sometimes the people who mean the most to us have absolutely no idea how much they mean. And sometimes the most extraordinary impact a person can have happens quietly. Inside a single human heart, there is something strange about the people who change our lives. Most of them never know they did. They never stand on a stage. They never receive an award. Nobody writes articles about them. Nobody tells them that years later, someone will still remember a single moment they almost forgot. Because the people who leave the deepest marks on our hearts are rarely the loudest people in the room. Most of the time, they are ordinary, quiet, unassuming, living lives that seem completely normal from the outside, and yet somehow they become unforgettable. I once heard a story about a teacher, not a famous teacher, not the kind who wins national recognition, just a woman who spent her days standing in front of a classroom, helping children understand the world a little better. year after year, lesson after lesson, test after test, nothing extraordinary. At least that's what she thought. One afternoon, many years after one of her students had graduated, she received a letter, a simple letter, a few pages long. Inside it, the former student thanked her, not for teaching mathematics, not for helping him pass exams, not for improving his grades. He thanked her for something she had completely forgotten. Years earlier, he had been going through one of the darkest periods of his young life. His parents were separating. His confidence was shattered. Every day felt heavier than the one before. He came to school carrying burdens no child should have to carry. And one morning after class, she had asked a simple question. Are you okay? That's all. 3 words. Nothing dramatic, nothing profound, just genuine concern. When he shrugged and tried to walk away, she gently stopped him. Then she said something else. I know things seem difficult right now, but don't give up on yourself. She probably spoke those words and moved on with her day. Maybe she said similar things to dozens of students throughout her career. Maybe she never thought about it again, but he did, because according to the letter, that moment changed something inside him. For the first time in months, he felt seen. For the first time in months, someone noticed the pain he had worked so hard to hide. For the first time in months, he felt like he mattered. Years later, he still remembered where he was standing. He still remembered the tone of her voice. He still remembered how those words felt, and he wanted her to know something. The reason he finished school, the reason he kept believing in himself, the reason he didn't completely give up during those difficult years was because of a conversation she barely remembered. Think about that. One moment, one sentence, one act of kindness, and an entire life quietly changed direction. The teacher thought she was simply doing her job. The student saw someone who helped save him. The difference between those two perspectives is astonishing. And yet, stories like this happen every day, everywhere. A father teaches his daughter how to ride a bicycle. Years later, she remembers not the bicycle, but the patience, the encouragement, the feeling that someone believed she could do something difficult. A friend stays on the phone until 3 a.m. listening to someone cry. The next day, the conversation seems ordinary, forgettable even, but the person on the other end never forgets it because that call happened on the night they felt most alone. A nurse offers a smile to a frightened patient. A stranger holds a door open. A coworker notices when someone is struggling. A neighbor checks in after a difficult loss. Tiny moments, tiny actions, tiny gestures, yet somehow they become enormous in the hearts of the people receiving them. Perhaps that's because human beings are not changed by grand events nearly as often as we imagine. More often, we are changed by small moments of connection. Moments when someone reminds us that we are not invisible. Moments when someone chooses to stay instead of leaving. Moments when someone notices what everyone else overlooked. The truth is, most people are carrying battles we cannot see. The man smiling in the grocery store, the woman sitting beside you on the train, the teenager scrolling through their phone, the coworker laughing during a meeting. Every person you meet is fighting struggles you know nothing about. Some are grieving, some are lonely, some are frightened, some are exhausted, some are desperately trying to hold themselves together. And because we cannot see their pain, we often underestimate the power of our presence. We assume that if we aren't doing something extraordinary, we aren't making a difference. But maybe that's not how life works. Maybe life changes in quieter ways. Imagine a person standing on the edge of giving up, not necessarily giving up on life. Sometimes it's giving up on a dream, giving up on hope, giving up on love, giving up on themselves. Now imagine someone enters their life at exactly the right moment, not with perfect answers, not with a miraculous solution, just with kindness, just with patience, just with presence. How many lives have been altered because somebody showed up at the right time? How many futures exist today because someone refused to let another person face darkness alone? We'll never know. And perhaps that's the point. The most important impacts are often invisible. The world celebrates visible success, the promotion, the trophy, the headline, the viral post, but the heart celebrates something different. The heart remembers who stayed. The heart remembers who listened. The heart remembers who cared. Years from now, very few people will remember how many followers someone had. Very few people will remember how expensive their car was. Very few people will remember how impressive their resume looked, but people will remember how they felt around them. They will remember the safety, the warmth, the understanding, the comfort, because emotions leave footprints that facts never can. And somewhere in your own life, there is probably someone you remember this way. Maybe it was a teacher. Maybe it was a grandparent. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe it was someone you only knew for a short period of time. Yet when you think about them now, a feeling returns. Not because they were famous, not because they were powerful, but because they made you feel valued, because they helped you carry something heavy, because they reminded you of your worth when you had forgotten it yourself. And here's the beautiful part. The person who had that impact on you may have no idea. They may have gone through life believing they were ordinary, believing they hadn't accomplished much, believing they hadn't changed anyone, never realizing that somewhere in someone else's story, they became a turning point. What if the same is true about you? What if there are people carrying pieces of your influence right now? People who remember things you've forgotten, people who still hear words you spoke years ago, people who found strength because you offered encouragement, people who felt less alone because you were there. You may never receive the letter. You may never hear the thank you. You may never know the role you played, but that doesn't mean the impact isn't real. The sun never asks the flowers if they are growing. It simply shines, and somehow life blooms because of it. Human beings are much the same. We affect one another in countless unseen ways every day. Every conversation, every act of compassion, every moment of understanding, sending ripples outward that continue long after we are gone, which means something remarkable is true. The value of your life cannot be measured only by what you can see, because some of the greatest things you will ever do will happen without your knowledge. And some of the people who love you most may never fully tell you why. Sometimes the person who changes a life isn't a hero. Sometimes they're simply the person who cared when nobody else seemed to. And sometimes the people who mean the most to us never realize how much they mean. Maybe that's why one of the most beautiful truths in life is also one of the easiest to miss. While you're busy questioning your value, someone else may already know it. While you're wondering whether you matter, someone else may already have the answer. Because somewhere, in ways you may never fully understand, you are far more important than you think. Not to everyone, but to someone, and sometimes that's where the real miracle begins. Think about the people you love most, not celebrities, not historical figures, not people you've admired from a distance. Think about the people whose absence would leave a space that nothing else could fill. The people whose names instantly bring warmth to your heart. The people who make the world feel a little safer simply because they exist. Now ask yourself something. What makes them so important? Is it their success, their achievements, their status, their wealth? Probably not. Most of the time, the people who matter most to us are important for reasons that seem almost impossible to measure. It's the way they listen, the way they laugh, the way they remember little details, the way they make us feel understood, the way their presence quiets a storm inside us. It's rarely about what they do. It's about who they are. And if that's true for the people you love, could it also be true for you? Imagine a young woman sitting alone in her apartment after a difficult day. Everything feels overwhelming. Work is exhausting. Life feels uncertain. Her confidence is slipping. She isn't looking for advice. She isn't looking for solutions. She just wants to feel less alone. Then her phone lights up. A message appears. Maybe it's only a few words, just checking on you. That's it. Simple, ordinary, easy to overlook. Yet the moment she sees it, something changes. Her shoulders relax. Her breathing slows. A small smile appears because someone thought about her. Someone remembered her. Someone cared enough to reach out. The message itself wasn't the gift. The person behind it was, and perhaps that's what we forget. People rarely need perfection. People rarely need us to solve every problem. People rarely need us to have all the answers. More often, they simply need our presence. They need to know that when life becomes difficult, they won't have to face it alone. There is an old saying that home is not a place, it's a person. And the older we get, the more true that becomes. Because eventually we realize that safety is not found in buildings. Comfort is not found in possessions. Peace is not found in achievements. Sometimes safety is a voice. Sometimes comfort is a hug. Sometimes peace is knowing that someone is there, someone who understands, someone who stays, someone who sees us completely and chooses to love us anyway. For someone in your life, you may be that person. You may be the voice that calms their fears. You may be the reason they smile on difficult days. You may be the first person they want to call when something wonderful happens. You may be the person they think about before they fall asleep. Not because you're perfect, not because you're extraordinary, but because your presence has become part of their emotional world, part of their sense of belonging, part of what makes life feel meaningful. The strange thing is that most people never realize when this happens. We don't wake up one morning and announce, today I became important to someone. It happens quietly, slowly, moment by moment, conversation by conversation, memory by memory. Trust is built, connection grows, love deepens. And before either person realizes it, their lives become intertwined. Their happiness begins to matter to each other. Their pain begins to affect each other. Their presence becomes comforting. Their absence becomes noticeable. And suddenly something incredible has formed. Not dependency, not possession, but significance. The kind of significance that cannot be bought, cannot be earned through status, cannot be manufactured, because it comes from something much deeper. It comes from being genuinely known. Perhaps that's why loneliness hurts so much. Not because we are physically alone, but because we fear being emotionally unseen. Every human heart carries the same hidden question. Does anyone truly see me? Not the version we show the world, not the polished version, not the strong version, not the successful version. The real version, the frightened version, the vulnerable version, the imperfect version. We all want someone who sees that person and stays. Someone who says, I know you're struggling. I know you're not perfect. I know you have scars, and I'm still here. Those words heal wounds that years of achievement never can, because achievement may impress people, But acceptance transforms people. And maybe without realizing it, you've already given that gift to someone. Maybe there is a child who feels safe because you're their parent. Maybe there is a parent who feels proud because you're their child. Maybe there is a friend who feels stronger because you're in their life. Maybe there is a partner who sleeps more peacefully because they know you'll be there tomorrow. Maybe there's someone whose darkest memories became easier to survive because you walked beside them through the pain. You'll probably never see all the ways your presence affects others. No one does. We only see fragments, little glimpses, tiny clues, a smile, a thank you, a long hug, a message that says, I appreciate you. But beneath those small moments lies something much bigger. Entire emotional worlds built around connection, entire lives quietly shaped by love. And perhaps the most beautiful part is this: the people who truly love you are not keeping score. They are not counting your accomplishments. They are not measuring your productivity. They are not calculating your worth. They love the things about you that numbers could never capture. The sound of your laugh, the way you tell stories, the way you care, the way you show up, the way you make them feel when life becomes difficult. Those are the things that stay. Those are the things that matter. Years from now, very few people will remember exactly what you owned. Very few people will remember what car you drove. Very few people will remember your social media profile, but they will remember how it felt to sit beside you. They will remember how it felt to talk with you. They will remember how it felt to be loved by you, because human beings are emotional creatures long before they are logical ones. We remember feelings. We remember comfort. We remember connection. We remember the people who became safe places in a complicated world. And maybe that's what this quote is really trying to tell us. Maybe being someone's world doesn't mean being the center of their existence. Maybe it means becoming part of what makes existence beautiful, part of what makes it bearable, part of what makes it worthwhile. Maybe it means becoming the reason someone believes kindness still exists. The reason someone believes love is real. The reason someone keeps moving forward when life becomes difficult. You may never appear in history books. You may never become famous. You may never change the entire world. But for one person, you may be the reason their world feels brighter, the reason their heart feels safer, the reason they continue to believe that they are not alone. And when you truly understand that, something inside you begins to change, because you stop asking whether you are important enough, and you start realizing that importance was never the right question. The real question is much simpler, much more human, much more beautiful. Who feels less alone because you exist? Because somewhere right now, there may be someone whose life is warmer, lighter, and more hopeful simply because you are part of it. And that kind of significance is greater than most people will ever understand. Perhaps the greatest tragedy of modern life is not that people are unloved. It's that so many people don't realize they are loved. Not because love isn't there, but because they're looking for it in the wrong places. They're looking for proof in applause, looking for proof in recognition, looking for proof in numbers, looking for proof in achievements, as if the value of a human life could somehow be calculated, as if significance could be measured like money in a bank account, as if love could be weighed on a scale. But life has a way of teaching us otherwise. Sooner or later, every person discovers a truth that changes everything. The things that impress the world are not always the things that matter most. Think about the people history remembers: the celebrities, the athletes, the billionaires, the politicians, the people whose names appear in headlines. Millions of strangers know who they are. Millions of strangers recognize their faces. Millions of strangers follow their stories. And yet, many of those same people have experienced profound loneliness. Many have spoken openly about feeling disconnected, misunderstood, empty, because attention and connection are not the same thing. Recognition and love are not the same thing. Visibility and significance are not the same thing. A million people can know your name without knowing your heart. And one person can know your heart without ever forgetting your name. That difference changes everything. The world often teaches us that bigger is better, more success, more money, more followers, more influence, more recognition, more admiration, more, more, more. But the heart speaks a different language. The heart isn't asking how many people admire you. The heart is asking who stays when life becomes difficult. The heart isn't asking how many people applaud you. The heart is asking who sits beside you when you're hurting. The heart isn't asking who celebrates your victories. The heart is asking who helps you survive your defeats. Because when everything is stripped away, what remains is not status. What remains is connection. Imagine a man who spends his entire life climbing higher, working harder, earning more, building a reputation. Eventually, he reaches the level he always dreamed of. The house is beautiful. The career is impressive. The accomplishments are undeniable. From the outside, he appears successful. Maybe people even envy him. But one evening, he comes home after a difficult day. The awards are still on the shelf. The accomplishments still exist. The money is still in the bank. Yet none of those things can ask him how he's doing. None of those things can hold his hand. None of those things can tell him he's loved. Because achievements may improve a life, but they cannot replace a relationship. Success may create comfort, but comfort is not the same as belonging. And belonging is one of the deepest human needs we possess. That is why some of the happiest moments in life appear insignificant from the outside. A family gathered around a dinner table, two friends laughing until they can't breathe, a child running into a parent's arms, a partner reaching for your hand during a difficult moment. No cameras, no headlines, no audience, yet those moments often become our most treasured memories. Why? Because they satisfy something deeper than ambition ever can. They remind us that we are connected. They remind us that we matter. They remind us that we are loved. And perhaps that's why so many people spend years chasing things they believe will make them feel important, only to discover that importance was never what they were truly seeking. What they were seeking was significance. And significance is different. Importance is often public. Significance is deeply personal. Importance can be granted by strangers. Significance is given by people who know you. Importance can disappear overnight. Significance often lasts a lifetime. A promotion can make you important. A title can make you important. Fame can make you important. But none of those things guarantee that you'll be meaningful to another human being. Meaning is earned differently. Meaning grows through presence, through kindness, through patience, through loyalty, through showing up over and over again. Meaning grows in ordinary moments. And that's exactly why people miss it, because they expect significance to look dramatic. They expect it to arrive with applause. They expect it to feel extraordinary. Instead, it usually arrives quietly. It looks like listening when someone needs to talk. It looks like remembering someone's birthday. It looks like checking in when everyone else forgets. It looks like sitting beside someone during a difficult season. It looks like staying again and again, long after excitement fades. long after convenience disappears, long after the world has moved on. There is a reason people rarely tell stories about the richest person in the room, but they never forget the kindest person. Years later, nobody remembers the size of the paycheck. They remember the person who made them feel valued. Nobody remembers how many followers someone had. They remember how that person treated them. Nobody remembers every achievement. They remember every act of love because hearts keep different records than history books. History records accomplishments, hearts record experiences. History records victories, hearts record kindness. History records names, hearts record feelings. And feelings last longer than most people realize. Maybe that's why some of the most powerful people in our memories were never powerful at all. Think about your own life. Who shaped you? Who influenced you? Who helped you become who you are? Was it necessarily the most successful person you knew? Or was it the person who believed in you? The person who encouraged you? The person who stayed when others left? The person who saw something valuable in you before you could see it yourself? Most likely, that's the person you remember, because love leaves fingerprints on the soul, and those fingerprints remain long after everything else fades. The world celebrates achievement because achievement is visible. Love often goes unnoticed because love is quiet, but quiet things are not weak. A seed grows in silence. The sunrise arrives without applause. The stars appear without asking for attention, and yet they transform the world around them. Love works much the same way. Its greatest power is often invisible. A parent sacrificing sleep for a child, a spouse remaining loyal through hardship, a friend answering a late night phone call, a person choosing compassion instead of judgment. These moments rarely make headlines, yet they shape lives. They shape families. They shape futures. They shape hearts, and hearts shape the world far more than headlines ever will. Maybe that's why the most meaningful people in our lives are rarely the most impressive people. They're the people who became safe places, the people who became sources of strength, the people who became reminders that we were never alone. Those people may never become famous. They may never change the entire world, but they change someone's world. And perhaps that's a far greater achievement because changing the world is an abstract idea. Changing one life is real. Changing one heart is real. Changing one person's experience of existence is real. And when you truly understand that, the way you measure your life begins to change. You stop asking, how many people know me? And start asking, who have I loved? You stop asking, how much have I achieved? And start asking, who feels stronger because I was there? You stop asking, how important am I? And start asking, whose life became brighter because I existed? Because maybe significance was never about being seen by everyone. Maybe significance was always about being unforgettable to someone. And sometimes one heart is enough to give an entire life meaning. Maybe the most beautiful things in life are the things we never fully get to see, the seeds we plant that grow after we're gone, the kindness we offer that continues long after we've forgotten it, the lives we touch without ever realizing it. Perhaps that is one of life's greatest mysteries and one of its greatest gifts, because if we could see every way we mattered to other people, we would probably spend far less time doubting ourselves. Imagine for a moment that you could look into the hearts of every person whose life you've touched, not just the obvious ones, not just the people who tell you, all of them, the friend who still remembers the conversation that helped them through a difficult year, the family member who found strength because of your example, the stranger whose day became brighter because of a small act of kindness. The child who felt safe because you were there. The person who chose not to give up because of something you once said. Imagine being able to see every ripple, every memory, every moment, every quiet impact. What would surprise you most? Perhaps it would be how little the grand achievements matter and how much the small moments matter. Because when people look back on their lives, they rarely treasure the things they once believed were most important. They don't remember every bill they paid. They don't remember every promotion. They don't remember every possession they owned. But they remember people, always people. They remember the person who sat beside them in grief, the person who celebrated their victories, the person who stayed during difficult seasons, the person who loved them when they felt difficult to love, the person who made life feel lighter, safer, warmer, more beautiful. In the end, human beings become memories inside one another. That is how we survive. That is how we continue. That is how love quietly defeats time. Long after a conversation ends, its comfort can remain. Long after a hug is released, its warmth can remain. Long after a person leaves the room, their presence can remain. And long after a life is over, its impact can remain. That thought is both humbling and extraordinary because it means that your life is bigger than you think. Not bigger in the way the world measures greatness, bigger in the way that truly matters. You exist inside stories you will never hear, inside memories you will never see, inside hearts you may never fully understand. Somewhere, someone remembers a version of you that changed them, a version of you that gave them courage, a version of you that gave them comfort, a version of you that helped them keep going. And the remarkable thing is that you may never know. You may never receive the thank you. You may never hear the story. You may never discover the role you played. Life doesn't always reveal those things. Sometimes the impact remains hidden. Sometimes the meaning remains invisible. Sometimes the answer to the question, did I matter, arrives in ways we cannot witness. And perhaps that requires a certain kind of faith, the faith to believe that kindness matters even when nobody applauds it, the faith to believe that love matters even when it goes unnoticed, the faith to believe that our presence matters even when we cannot measure its effect, because not everything valuable can be counted. A sunset cannot be measured by numbers. A friendship cannot be measured by numbers. A mother's love cannot be measured by numbers. A human heart cannot be measured by numbers. Yet somehow we spend so much of our lives trying to reduce our worth to statistics, followers, views, money, accomplishments, recognition, approval, as though those things hold the final answer. But they don't. The final answer has always been somewhere else. The final answer lives inside the people whose lives became better because you existed, inside the people who felt seen because you saw them, inside the people who felt loved because you loved them, inside the people who found hope because you shared yours. Maybe that's why some of the most meaningful lives never become famous, because fame and meaning are not the same thing. One is about being known. The other is about being felt, and being felt lasts longer. A famous name can be forgotten. A loved feeling can survive generations. Think about the people who have shaped your own life. Maybe some of them are gone now. Maybe years have passed, maybe decades. Yet when you think of them, something still happens inside you. A memory appears, a feeling returns, a smile emerges, a lesson resurfaces. Their influence continues. Their presence echoes, not because they were powerful, not because they were celebrated, but because they mattered. That is the legacy of a human life, not the things we collect, not the status we achieve, not the attention we receive, but the love we leave behind. And perhaps that's what this entire journey has been leading toward. A simple truth, a truth so gentle that most people overlook it. You do not need to be everything to everyone. You do not need to change the whole world. You do not need to earn your worth through endless achievement. You do not need to spend your life proving that you matter. You already do. Not because of what you own, not because of what you've accomplished, not because of how many people know your name, but because somewhere your existence has become part of someone else's happiness, part of someone else's strength, part of someone else's healing, part of someone else's story. And whether you realize it or not, that is extraordinary. Maybe there is someone who smiles when your name appears on their phone, someone who feels calmer when they hear your voice, someone who carries your encouragement through difficult days, someone who feels safer because you are in their life, someone who has survived more than you know because you were there. You may never fully understand what you mean to them. Most people never do. Love often hides its deepest work beneath the surface, quiet, invisible, prescient, yet endlessly powerful, which brings us back to the beginning, back to that simple sentence, a sentence that sounds beautiful at first, but becomes even more beautiful once you've lived enough life to understand it. To the world, you may be one person, one face among billions, one story among countless others, one ordinary life moving through an ordinary day. But to one person, you may be the voice that silences fear, the hand that helped them stand, the light that guided them through darkness. The reason they still believe in kindness, the reason they still believe in love, the reason they still believe in themselves. To one person, you may be the memory that keeps them warm when life grows cold, the strength they borrow when their own strength disappears, the safe place they return to when the world becomes overwhelming, the reminder that they are not alone. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps that has always been enough, because a life does not become meaningful when it is admired by millions. A life becomes meaningful when it touches another heart, when it eases another burden, when it brings light to another soul, when it reminds another human being that they are loved. So if you ever find yourself questioning your worth, if you ever find yourself wondering whether you matter, if you ever feel small beneath the weight of this enormous world, remember this. Your value is not determined by the size of the crowd watching you. Your value is found in the lives you've touched, the hearts you've comforted, the people you've loved, the hope you've given, and somewhere, perhaps at this very moment, there is someone whose world is brighter because you exist. Someone whose life would be different without you. Someone who sees you as far more precious than you see yourself. Because to the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you may be their entire world.